here, let me share my screen with you. So this is my Rhino screen, as you know, probably. And there are two ways to access Grasshopper. Mainly, you can click on this button here, or you can type Grasshopper to your command prompt. So if I click here, launch Grasshopper, this canvas will pop up. What is this canvas about? It's basically the working area that we use while we are using Grasshopper. And as in any other software, there are a bunch of tools here like file edit, and there are a bunch of other things such as Pancake, Orthograph, MetaHooper, and Follogram. These are coming from different plugins. If you don't have them, that's completely okay. We're not going to use any of those. Speaking of which, there are a bunch of other like letters you see here from different plugins. If you are new to Grasshopper, you have none of these. So again, no problem. We are not going to use any of those here today. So mainly what we'll be using like prompts, maybe math, maybe some, like we don't go into lists today. We can use vectors today, and we can use like we are not going to use curves, surfaces, meshes, and so on and so forth. But you probably have things up to display, I think, and you might have another tab called extra right somewhere here. But again, no problem, nothing to worry about today. So what we see here is basically the things that we name as components. And under params, we have geometry, primitive, input, util, and you don't have any of these, no worries again. So let's say, I'm sorry, let's say if you would like to come up with, I don't know, if you would like to come up with if you would like to import a geometry from Rhino to Grasshopper, you can select that geometry by type here from this param and geometry tab. So let's say if you want to import a curve here. So what you will be seeing here is we see an orange curve icon here. And obviously, if you are using Rhino or Grasshopper in a different setup, such as when we come over here onto display, you may not see the icon, you may see just the name, or you may see just not the full name, you can see the short names of these kind of components. But in my case, I've used draw full icons and draw full names. That's why we see curve as here. Let's have rectangle here as an example. And if we remember the latest exercise that we did yesterday or in the previous video, if you're watching it sometime later, what we've done is we extruded a curve, and then we talked about how we can like use record history to create that curve extrusion in a bit more parametric fashion. So if I copy this now, what I'll be seeing is I'm copying this exact same rectangle. So what we did yesterday and we'll be doing today is extruding this curve, right? So let's extrude this curve. And when we type extrude, you see it shows us, it asks us select curves to extrude. So what we do is select this curve, click enter, we put a like length to it, let's say 200 or 2000 for this case. And then if you want to create an output surface, output sub D, output surface sub D, direction, we can change the direction, both sides, yes or no, solid, yes or no, delete input, yes or no, and so on and so forth. So let's put 2000 again here. And when we do that, what we see is a box that is not capped because we didn't ask it to be capped as a solid, right? So we have this, and then the whole modeling process is done for this one. But if I redo this process without paying attention, because while we are modeling things, we are in a rush usually, or there are deadlines, we always have to be in a hurry. So if I extrude curve, select the curve to extrude, put 2000, and let's say this time I want to cap this one, and then 2000 again. I kept it and it's all done. I didn't go through the questions and I didn't pay attention all the options that I can have. But in Grasshopper, if I want to do this operation, what I need to do is basically think that process step by step. So if I want to extrude that curve, so what I need to do, I need to come to surface, and then under freeform, I need to find the extrude first. So I find the extrude, and what extrude operation requires, it asks for a base and it asks for a direction, right? So if I put a base in this case needs to be a profile curve or surface. So it's asking me to pull out the curve. That's why I come over to the geometry and put my curve in. But as you see here, all the components, by the way, these small like rectangular geometries are called components in Grasshopper environment. And if they are orange, there might be some issues in that component, or as it operates, there might be some problems. But the ones that we have here, they're basically empty containers that are going to be filled by the geometries that we'll be importing from Rhino. So if I right click to this, if I say set one curve, now what you see is this component turns into gray, meaning it's now fed by a geometry or geometries or curve or curves. And if I select this component, click on this component, what I see, the geometry is highlighted here as green, right? So this is going to be my base. And what is the direction? If I hover over here, it's asking me about the extrusion direction, in which, again, if I switch back to this exercise, if I copy this here to somewhere else just to show you something, and if I put extrude curve, you see it asks me about direction. In this case, in that case, I haven't specified that direction, and if you haven't specified it, it goes only Z. But in Grasshopper, you have to be putting that in if you want to do it, if you want to extrude this curve even into the Z direction. So I need to come over to the vector and I need to select vector and unit Z, right? And when I put unit Z here, you see it turns into gray, which means the component works. We have an extrusion result as an open BREF. By the way, BREF meaning boundary representation. It's being used to define three-dimensional objects in Grasshopper except meshes. So if I zoom in, what I'm seeing is it extruded this geometry, but really like little or really short amount, because the unit Z as a component has a default value as 1 in factor. So it's extruded as 1 millimeter in this case. By the way, Grasshopper uses the units from the Rhino. So since I'm using millimeters here, this number is also, or this unit is millimeters too. So in order to define this, what I can do is come up here from under util, under input, I can grab a number slider. So number slider is basically the numeric information that we can supply to any numeric operation that or any operation that we need numbers, right? So if I right click to this, I can see a menu that is related with this, because if I don't do that, the preset of this number slider is ranging from 0 and 1, right? So if I right click to this and say edit, and then I said I can change the name of it, like I can say extrusion length. You can put an expression, you can change the grip style, you can change the rounding. If you want to have how many digits or what kind of a decimal you want to have, if you have this floating point numbers in rounding session, if you increase the decimals, you can put integers here, you can put even numbers, you can put odd numbers. Let's put this time decimals with 2, or let's put floating numbers with 2 decimals. And minimum range, we can say 0, and the maximum range, we can say 5,000. Or what we can say is 2,000 here and minus 2,000 as minimum, because we can define minimum numbers with negative values. And you see the range is now 4,000. I'm sorry. You can change this value here. You can increase, decrease this, right? Or what you can do, you can change it here. And when I change this, since now it's minus, it extrudes down, right? You see? It extrudes up, extrudes down, so and so forth. So one thing related with the number sliders, if you double click on it, you can put the exact value that you need. So let's say 1,500.67. And you see it comes to that. And a quick way to create a slider is to, if you type, I don't know, like if you double click to the canvas, if you say 2000, you will have a slider that ranges from 0 to 10,000 now. And obviously this is kind of a preset in Grasshopper. So if you type 25, you will have a slider that ranges from 0 to 100. If you put 5, you will have between 0 and 10. Okay. And you see, this is now turned into red. But one thing to consider here, everything that you create in Grasshopper is actually a preview. So you cannot select any of these geometries, right? Speaking of previews, if you come over to here on this spot, what we are seeing is related with how we see things in Grasshopper. So if I click on this button here, which has a closed eye in front of a cylinder, I assume, it says don't draw any preview geometry. So if I select this, it's not, even though it has a geometry inside, as a result of our extrusion operation, we don't see anything. If I click over here, I see things in wireframe. If I click here, I see things in shaded preview. So this is basically draw a boundary on the canvas to exclude objects. So if I click here, and if I select this, it will only show me this component. If I do it again, if I click escape, it's gone. If I click again and select only this extrusion, it only shows me the extrusion. People use this. I don't use this very much, so it's up to you actually. But this one is very, very functional, I believe, because when you have imagine when you have a long script, you may want to toggle things on and off, right? So if you select this, what it's going to do is it will only show the geometries that your selected component preview. So if I turn this on, select this, it will show me the only selected components and their geometries inside of those. And obviously these are still valid. If I select this, I don't see anything. If I select this, I see things only when they selected as in wireframe. And if I select this, I see things in shaded. Obviously, if I come over here, document preview settings, once you select things, you may say, okay, my selected geometries should be in purple and my normal geometries should be in, I don't know, maybe I am trying to find a contrary color, but yeah, let's say blue. And when I say okay, when I click on this, you see everything that I generate from on this canvas is going to be displayed as blue now. And when I select them, it's going to be purple. But how I'll be using this, how I'll be creating this, right? How I'll be creating this in Rhino, right? So what I need to do is I need to right click to this. I need to say bake. You see an egg here. And when you say bake, it will ask you to bake the geometry on which layer you want to bake. So if I say layer 1, and you can put a lot of different things related to the bake geometry options, such as in which color it's going to be used. You can select the colors here. or you can use bilayer. You may want to use some decorations like the arrows at the beginning or end, display how that geometry is going to be displayed, like shaded, rendered, whatsoever. Mode, locked, hidden. Group, if you are baking multiple objects, you may want to bake them with as a group, so on and so forth. And if I say okay, now what I see is this geometry is turned into a Rhino geometry that I can still work on, right? But one thing here, so if I draw a circle here, and if I say set one curve, you see now it selects or it extrudes this curve with this amount. If I put double or if I put multiple curves, let's put an ellipse here as well. And if I say set multiple curves, it extrudes them all at once, okay? This is how we do these kind of operations in Grasshopper, inside of Grasshopper. So what I want to do is I want to save this file, right? So I save this document as, like, let's say, onto my exercise file, and let's say Curve Extruder. And I save this. If I close this off now, what I'm seeing is my Grasshopper canvas shows me one rectangle in green, meaning the Grasshopper script that you just created is known by computer, or it can be located by Grasshopper, so you can call it back, right? But like, let's say if I delete these curves, so what it's gonna do? You see it turns into orange and you won't see any results. So what you can do is you can define a new curve, and any curve that, or any curves that you define here, open, closed, polyline, whatsoever, is going to be, when you define, is going to be extruded by this amount. So this is basically your very first script, Grasshopper script. Yes, I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you like the content, please hit like button, and if you haven't subscribed yet, please consider subscribing. See you in another one.